folks, Papa Boris here with some more Leaders Game commentary. It's time to start our next tournament. This tournament's actually already over with, but I'm just getting to the first game of it. This was the Champions Second Cup. The first Cup of Champions was a round robin, and it was really crazy. Based on some popular feedback, this was a much more modest Swiss system, but just like the first Champions Cup, it is still a normal mode game, not expert mode, which was how the other tournament, the World Leader Circuit, was played. Anyway, I was a little bit dispirited to see that my first opponent of the second Champions Cup was the designer of the game, CastorT, who absolutely mopped the floor with me in the expert mode of the World Leader Circuit. But as you can see, he's a little bit of a whimsical player. I checked the replay log. His first round pick was between Assassin, Manipulator, and Wanderer. Royal Guard was not here until the Assassin was taken. And Manipulator, okay, is a bit of an interesting character, but I think most players would definitely take the Wanderer over the Assassin, especially first pick. Now, in some other conversations with players, I've learned that CastorT, being the designer, kind of plays the game like a designer. He likes testing stuff, so I caught him in a whimsical testing mood where he's experimenting with taking the Assassin, and you know what? I'll take all the help I can get. So here I am against the second best player in the world and the person who designed the game. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to do what I always do, which is I'm going to grab the Royal Guard. So I draft it, and then, luck is with me. The Royal Guard was a top deck after the Assassin was picked, and then the Illusionist comes out as a top deck after I take the Royal Guard. And with the Illusionist, I think there's a really clear spot where you should put it, and that's there. Basically, the thing about the Illusionist here is that it discourages my opponent from putting the Assassin on this spot. Because if the opponent puts the Assassin here, I can swap with it, get really close to the leader, and move my leader away from the Assassin, creating some distance. So my goal with putting the Illusionist here was it can still do the usual thing of swapping with the Royal Guard after the Royal Guard comes there, but it also discourages the opponent from putting the Assassin one step closer to my leader. Now, to be fair, the Assassin is having some influence on the game, because maybe under normal circumstances I might want to do the thing where I move the leader here, put the Royal Guard here, move the Royal Guard, and then swap with my leader like that, something like that, and by having the Illusionist here instead, I can't do it. Well, fortune favors us all because now the Acrobat comes out. My opponent does decide not to keep the Assassin in swappable range of the Illusionist, and then he just leaves the leader where he is, and he does take the Acrobat. So he's not going to go too crazy grabbing the Manipulator or something. He does take a very powerful character. So now, on my turn, I just step up with the leader, I summon the Royal Guard all the way up, which maybe is a mistake. It may have been smarter just to keep the Royal Guard here and then swap the Illusionist with it and then look forward to doing the Royal Guard, a resummon next turn. But I decided to do this because that blocks the Acrobat's jump. So it means that my Illusionist is misplaced. Obviously now I would have rather had it here and swap with the leader, but I can't do that. Of course, it did have the effect of moving the Assassin a different way, so it's fine, but it's a little bit clunky the way that it turned out. As it is, I move the Illusionist up, so now the Illusionist is in line with my Royal Guard and can swap with the Royal Guard, and then I can move my leader and resummon the Royal Guard next to his leader and all that good stuff. Then, I do take a little bit of a weird line here. Normally, of course, you take the Wanderer here without question. Having such a strong start, you want to just try to be aggressive. But I decided to grab the Manipulator, which is maybe a little bit meek. Maybe you should just take the Wanderer and try to just cash in your chips and get the early win. But I decided to use the Manipulator as a babysitter for the Assassin. Now, if the Assassin steps in, then I just shove it back. And then my character cancels his character, and I'm hoping to make something happen with my two more powerful characters. I think it's a little bit meek. I think you should just take the Wanderer here. But it kind of works out where my mistake ends up being a good thing because my opponent has the Bruiser. And I think with the Bruiser being unopposed, trying to go for some kind of really fast aggressive win is really difficult because the Bruiser is an amazing defensive as well as offensive piece. So I end up being glad I took the Manipulator to babysit the Assassin, but it probably wasn't objectively the correct play if you consider all the possibilities that could come out of the deck. In any case, my opponent steps back with the leader, steps up with the Acrobat ready to jump over my Royal Guard if I keep it there, and then he moves the Assassin in. One thing I was concerned about is I was concerned about him putting the Assassin here and then threatening to cut off my Manipulator like this. And if I step up with a Manipulator, then he can step back here, and then I'm adjacent, so I can't manipulate it. But my opponent is essentially daring me to use the Manipulator as a babysitter for the Assassin, and I was actually happy with it. I don't know if that's correct. I don't know if the alternative line of moving the Assassin down and swinging it around is better. I just know that at the time the game was being played, I was happy that my opponent didn't do this because I was willing to make that trade. Now, he's not going to be too crazy. He's going to take the Bruiser. So apart from the Assassin, he's putting together a pretty good team. So what is it that I do on my turn? Well, this is where I take a A little bit of a strange line. What I do is, first of all, yes, I am going to babysit the assassin, but I decide, okay, this is another turn I take a strange line. This is this turn where I do the obvious. Of course, I'm going to swap with my Royal Guard, and then I'm going to resummon the Royal Guard. But I don't move it, because I don't want the Acrobat to jump over my Illusionist. I now am conceding the fact that the Bruiser is going to make him perfectly safe. I can't, hem in his pieces because the Bruiser can just shove my pieces out. So I'm just trying to be a little bit offensive as well as defensive. And here I am going to grab the Wanderer. So that's my complete team, very strong. The Manipulator's a little iffy, but I'm using it to babysit the Assassin while my Royal Guard, Illusionist, and Wanderer take up aggressive posts. I was not happy to see the Claw come out. He steps up with the Bruiser, hides behind it, steps in with the Assassin, so he's continuing to trade the Assassin for the Manipulator instead of trying to get the Assassin to cut the Manipulator off. And then he is going to take the Claw. So a very strong team for my opponent. Very, very strong. Bruiser, Acrobat, Claw. And then, of course, the Assassin kind of counters my Manipulator. So ultimately what happened here is that although the opening draft board was not that great, the top decks were incredible for both of us, and we both have a really, really strong team. All right, this is the turn where I take a very strange line. I have not exactly a puzzle because I'm not sure that what I did was correct, but I think it's an important position to think about. Clearly, we're headed for a very aggressive game. It's going to be explosive. What do you do to try to maximize your odds of beating one of the world's best players who designed the game? So I don't know if this is correct or not. Maybe you take an ordinary line. Maybe, you just kind of step away from the Assassin. Maybe move the Manipulator. Or maybe you keep babysitting the Assassin. Maybe you just jump in with your Wanderer. But the thing is that my Illusionist is not really good at illusioning right now because he's up against all these pieces. So what I decided to do is, first of all, babysit the Assassin, but also I summon the Wanderer up to the leader. It's not as threatening as it looks because the leader can just go the other way, and I don't really have an easy way to break through this wall, especially because the Bruiser can shove my pieces out of the way. So what I decide to do is I summon my Royal Guard backwards, move my leader out of the way, and then I swap with the Royal Guard, which may seem a little odd because isn't the Royal Guard the one that can get really close? And isn't your Illusionist the one who wants to get close with the summoning? But I kind of abandoned my dreams of just a full offense win because of the Bruiser. I never had a chance to take a Jailer or a Protector, so the Bruiser's unopposed, and the rest of my opponent's squad, minus the Assassin, is very strong. So my thinking was, by putting the Illusionist here, I am discouraging my opponent from jumping with the Acrobat here. Because if he jumps with the Acrobat, then I can swap it with the Illusionist. Now, the Acrobat is then kind of close, but at least, or to my leader, but at least he doesn't have any pieces to jump over, so I can maybe try to just run away from the Acrobat and call it a day. I didn't plan it out exactly, but my hope was that I would psychologically discourage my opponent from doing that. Same thing with the Bruiser. If my Illusionist is here, my opponent could just bruise the Illusionist and shove it out of the way. But now, if my opponent does this Bruiser move, then I could swap with the Bruiser. And of course, if my opponent, jumps with the Acrobat, then still I can swap with the Acrobat. So either way, my Illusionist gets recentralized, swaps with one of his pieces, puts it on the bottom of the board where it's maybe out of position and will take a long time to get back. So that was my strategic thinking behind this weird Illusionist Royal Guard swap. So I was very curious to see what my opponent would do, and what he decided was to swap, or to pull up to my Manipulator with the Claw. I actually didn't talk about this, but that was an important point of the Claw being drafted here. Not only is the Claw a strong piece, but it can get advanced. And not only is this giving the Claw a lot of free moves, but also now the Assassin can actually start moving, and the Manipulator no longer has eyes on it to babysit it. My opponent thinks about it twice, shoves my Royal Guard, jumps over the Bruiser with the Acrobat, moves the leader away from the Wanderer, and then he does in fact decide to still pull up with the Claw and the Assassin. All right, so now every turn is critical. The pieces are closing in on my king. There's an Acrobat and a Bruiser, which are like a nightmare to try to deal with, so it's not exactly a puzzle per se, but think about what you would do in this spot. All right, I think I got a go for it. My opponent dared me to do it, and I'm going to do it. I swap with the Acrobat, and I move up with my leader. This is extremely dangerous, moving up to an unopposed Bruiser, because now the Bruiser can get close, the Acrobat can get close, and, it's really difficult to get away from those pieces. But I decided to just go for it because I have a very aggressive situation here. What I get to do is put my Royal Guard right up to his leader and then spawn the Wanderer back here. And I think this is very important because I think if you just give chase on foot with the Wanderer, his leader just walks away from it, and there's really very little that you can do about it. But by doing this, I'm forcing his leader to go the other way, and that way he's close to my leader, and my leader might be a checkmating piece. The leader being over here near my leader is also important because maybe in some lines I'm going to need to use my Royal Guard as defense, and if my leader's near his leader, then I can always resummon the Royal Guard for checkmate. Whereas if my Wanderer gives chase on foot and the leader goes over here, my Royal Guard, if he ever goes back for defense, might not be able to be used as an offensive piece anymore. So that's why I decided I wanted his leader going this way rather than the other way. Even though it means that there's an extra space now between the leader and my Wanderer. So now I was waiting to see what my opponent would do. The thing I thought he would do is I thought he would shove my Illusionist in here and then step up with the Acrobat, but he chose a different move. He decided to just step up with the Claw instead of putting my Illusionist there, step up with the Assassin, and just jump into the empty space with his Bruiser. He hides, of course, to prevent checkmate. He has to just run from my Wanderer to avoid checkmate. And then he steps up with the Acrobat. So now I'm really being threatened with checkmate here. And again, this is a critical scenario. Pause and think about what you would do if you were in this spot. All right, so what I tried to do is find any way whatsoever to put my leader here and not be checkmated. Because if I could do that, I thought that I would win. Because then all I have to do is just give chase with the Wanderer, and then my leader and my Royal Guard can checkmate, or my Wanderer and my leader, or my Wanderer and my Royal Guard could checkmate. But I just could not figure out a way to put my leader here and survive. The problems are twofold. One is that he can just shove my leader here and then get in there with the Acrobat. So, okay, maybe you summon your Royal Guard here to block that. The problem is that if your leader is here, he can actually shove your leader here, and then the Acrobat jumps over the Royal Guard that you put there for defense, or for that matter, claws it up, but you can block the claw. The real issue is he can jump over the Royal Guard and then checkmate. And on top of that, there's also the possibility that the Bruiser can push my leader there, and then the leader checkmates. So I have a little bit of a problem, which is that if I put my Royal Guard here to stop that, then he does the other thing, shoving it with the Acrobat. But if I, try to if I did find some way to stop the Acrobat from causing a problem, then he could always shove my leader here and then checkmate with his leader. And I just could not find a way to block all the possibilities. So then the question becomes, how do you just not get checkmated, period? And the answer to that is, okay, you do need to step the leader, but not up to the Bruiser. You just have to step it away from the Bruiser, and then you have to put the Royal Guard there just to stop the Acrobat from stepping in for checkmate along with the Bruiser. Then it's also, of course, very critical that you block the Royal Guard from the Claw, because otherwise the Claw could pull the Royal Guard up, and then the Bruiser and the Acrobat step in for checkmate. Not that I wouldn't want to move here with the Manipulator anyway. So the question is, where do you put your Wanderer and your Illusionist? And what I came up with is you just need to walk with your Wanderer. And the reason for that is it's really, really, really important to stop the leader from being able to run back the other way. And right now, my opponent actually cannot run the other way, which is really, really critical. If my opponent runs the other way, then I step up with my leader, I summon my Royal Guard here, and I step in for checkmate. And if my opponent goes in with the Bruiser, I actually am able to go here with my leader, summon the Royal Guard here, and then step the Royal Guard up for checkmate. Which means that the Illusionist actually has to stay put, because if the Illusionist moves, the Assassin can step in the square, which stops my leader from stepping in the square, which means he can move the Bruiser here, and then he is able to run with the leader. Now you might say, well, hang on, Pop Wars, what if your Illusionist moves there? Then he cannot run that way with the leader, because then, of course, obviously, you have an elementary checkmate. And that's true. That is a fair point. Let me think about that. What is a drawback to putting the Illusionist there? I don't know. I forgot about this part of the commentary, because yeah, he can't run back with the leader, because then it's checkmate. He would have to just keep running into the corner. I'm not actually sure. Maybe the Illusionist being here is just good to block the Assassin from coming in, because I don't have checkmate on the following turn, and so keeping the Assassin away for an extra turn is good because it buys me one more turn to hide. All right, so I was waiting to see what my opponent would do, and he decided to do this. He moved to the corner with his leader because he can't let the Wanderer touch his leader. Because of the fact that all of his pieces are kind of away from my leader, he just cannot stop. The bruiser alone is not enough to stop me from being able to put my leader in a position where the royal guard can summon in and get into checkmate and touch the leader along with my wanderer. So the leader has to run. After that, he stepped in with the assassin where he could, moved around with the claw, and shoved my illusionist into the hole. He then passed, keeping the acrobat sitting where he is. And at this point, I think I've won the game. Pause. And now it is a puzzle. How do you win in this position? Okay, so just to be clear, there's no checkmate here. But you do have a very easy way to win. All you have to do is move up your leader, summon the royal guard back offensively, and then step in with your wanderer. Now the enemy leader is completely pinned and cannot move. You just need to make sure that there's no weird way that you get checkmated here, but neither the assassin, nor the claw, nor the bruiser have any way whatsoever of being able to touch your leader. I decided to move my manipulator away because otherwise the bruiser could go here and the acrobat could jump over the manipulator and jump here and touch my leader, but I decided, you know what, let's make sure that none of my opponent's pieces touch my leader, just in case I missed any old weird thing. And then I passed the turn, and at this point, I was waiting to see what happened, and I didn't miss anything. My opponent passed the turn and gave me the honor of checkmating him with my leader. And so that was a very exciting first game of the second Champions Cup, getting a win against the designer and the second strongest player in the world, perhaps on the back of a slightly whimsical assassin draft over a wanderer on the first turn of the game. Although again, I now have had some more information, and I don't think that the designer was playing easy on me because of some conversation we had or anything, which I wondered about before. It is just seemingly a feature of how he plays the game generally. So thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you again soon with the second game of this tournament.